Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Interlinked, powered by Shrapnel. Brace yourself for impact, crypto gamers, because I am reporting from the Shadow Zone. STX1 just wrapped up. It was an absolute banger. I know I was out there grinding for my Sigma, trying to get my missions complete. Only problem is, I suck. So I got most of my Sigma, full confession, off of dead bodies and extracted my ass out of there. But I'm going to get a second bite at the apple in STX2 dropping right around the corner. And it's going to include new map updates, suppressors, which I'm excited about because I want to live my inner James Bond fantasy. And I will be there grinding for some more Sigma. So if you haven't gotten a chance to get your extraction pack, now might be the time so you too can drop in. Huge shout out to our sponsor, BYTES Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked. Today, we are joined by none other than Firestorm, our fearless leader of Neo Tokyo. Absolute pleasure to have you on, Firestorm. How you doing today?
Doing great. Happy to be here. It's come full circle. From the first 10 episodes of this podcast were a different format. We're hosting live on Spaces, and yeah, it's changed a lot over the years, but excited to be here, excited to dive in. I know there's a lot that I haven't revealed about my personal life that I'm sure people are dying to hear about. So it'll be fun to get into that. And general gaming, I think Ben is in the car here, so he'll be in and out. But for now, just me and you, Nick. So intimate.
Let's dive into it. Also loving the paraphernalia in the background, the Master Chief, the N64, the Minted Solid. I've got a couple of those in my other office. That's got to be one of my favorite things coming out of the merch store.
The Valeria Games Starter Edition, still sealed.
Oh, let's go.
How much will this be worth in 20 years? I don't know.
Probably 1 Bitcoin when Bitcoin's at 1 million.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's dive into that background. So let's get a little bit of your personal background, maybe how you got into Web3, and that'll take us how you got involved in NT as well.
Yeah. Yeah, before how I got into Web3, I think taking it back even further, grew up with 2 older brothers, and both of them kind of had influences on me in different ways. Brother number 1, the middle brother, was kind of my gamer buddy. We didn't get along in a lot of areas, but the one thing we did get along in was gaming. So we played a lot of like N64, GameCube, PlayStation 2, the works growing up. So that was a big part of our relationship. My oldest brother, Mike, is a professional video editor, and he started that very young. So I was kind of the subject of a lot of our home video shenanigans. So I became pretty comfortable on camera as a young lad. And eventually kind of took upon the video editing skill set myself from him, just from like watching him edit in his room all the time. And he's 6 years older than me. So he was off in college, and, I was just starting middle school. So yeah, those 2 influences definitely carried on into like my hobbies more so. Getting into like middle school is when Halo 3 came out, which I was completely obsessed with. Prior to that, Halo 2 as well. But Halo 3 is when I started diving into like capturing my gameplay, starting to edit montages, everything on that side. And like that really became like a big passion of mine. I started a YouTube channel at the time. If you would have asked me like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was like, I want to be a gaming YouTuber. And that was before streaming picked up. It was more so like, the pre-edited montage, like machinima era of gaming YouTube. So yeah, that was kind of like that era. I made a lot of Halo videos. Every time we had a school assignment that allowed for a video version of that, it was an excuse for me to make a Halo machinima with my buddies. I remember one of them got picked up by Bungie, the Halo developer, and they posted it on like the homepage of Bungie.net. It was for Spanish 1 or Spanish 2, and it was in Halo 3, like on Sandtrap with our characters like teabagging each other and everything. And like I just remember the class just laughing so hard during the teabag moment, the most, the climax of the whole story. And the teachers had no idea what the hell was going on. But a Bungie appreciated it, and you can look in the YouTube comments today. They're like, "Congrats on Bungie homepage and everything." And that was when I was like eighth grade or freshman in high school. So that was a big moment for my upcoming YouTube career. After that, I still focused on Halo, a little bit of Destiny. When Destiny started being created by Bungie, the same company, they posted a few of my videos as well. I made a series of like Halo comparison weapon and vehicle videos that were like pretty popular. They each have over 100,000 views. Xbox Live posted them like on the Halo app and then got picked up in a few different places. So that got a decent amount of traction as well. It was nothing like really big. I probably had 2,000 subscribers or something like that, but it was a fun like side hobby with a little bit of income as a teenager. It was significant, like a few $100 or something a month. So that was a fun time, and like really started that interest in content creation that I still have to this day, somewhat, even though I'm not like actively editing that much anymore. So yeah, that was kind of like the early days of gaming interest, going into content creation. In college, it was the same. Like the new Halos came out and they kind of were, pretty lame and pretty bad. So that kind of started killing off my passion on that side of things. But all along, like, gaming with friends, keeping up with long distance friends through gaming, it's always been there as a passion. Haven't had as much time to keep up with the modern games of today, like Helldivers, and didn't even get to play Pal World and anything like that. So focused on the Web3 sub niche we have here right now. But I would love more time, and I'm sure I'll get more time. It's just like, 6 months into having a newborn, it really rugs you of time.
No doubt about it. At around the same time, my sister actually just had a kid, so I've got the easy job. I'm just the funkle who gets to fly in and play, but I've certainly got to see from their perspective. Obviously, that's extremely time consuming. Obviously, there was a slew of like not so great Halos. Did you end up having the time to play Halo Infinite? Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so actually, I did play it a decent amount. It was like really good and didn't get as much credit as it deserved. There were just parts that weren't ready, like at launch. They added co-op and other things like a year later. At that time, this was like around the Neo Tokyo Mint time of fall, late 2021. I was actually running a pro Halo players socials and TikTok and video content, a YouTube channel. Ace, he played for Space Station Gaming. His older brother was Elamite Warrior, who was also a pro Halo player on like Straight Rippin and some of the classic Halo MLG teams. So yeah, I was running his socials, doing like his short content for those platforms for like 2 or 3 months. And then once the Halo Infinite pro scene kind of died down, I stopped working on that. But that's around the time when my interest in Web3 and NFTs are picking up. So kind of like moved over to that side of the gaming world. Yeah, so yeah, and really since like then a couple years ago, I haven't been actively editing anything. And have had the editing team of Neo Tokyo to do that work for me. Shout out to LeBoomington. So yeah, I don't miss it, but it's always like something that I'm sure I could pick up. It's like riding a bike. So yeah, LeBoomington, if you have any edits that you need my montage touch on, I'm sure I could throw some like no scopes into this podcast for us.
Oh, that'd be great. Be careful what you wish for. I know he is a man of many needs when it comes to extra bandwidth on the editing side.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
give
that'd
you
be
full
great.
permission to throw memes into my video frame for this podcast.
Yes, and if you can dig up that old Spanish video, that would be great as well.
Yeah.
LeBoomington, that's probably available somewhere on
I'll
the
send that one
internet.
over. The best thing about that one, the title is the Jesus Machinima. Okay, so we had the Adventures of Pablo and Barrientos. That was the Spanish one, and then I went to a Christian high school, so in like our New Testament biblical class, I made the Jesus Machinima, which was like telling the story of Christ and redemption and all this stuff in like a very sacrilegious way. So yeah, I'll definitely send you guys the links to both of those. They're classics.
Oh, hell yeah. Look forward to watching that. Had a Catholic sort of school upbringing, preschool through eighth grade. So I'm now just very jealous that I was unable to work in Halo into any of my projects.
We also
But
included teabagging in that one, the Jesus Machinima, and the face of my teacher. He like turned beet red and like tried to cover up the screen. Oh man, I'll never forget that. But I think he gave us an A, so it was totally worth it.
yeah, shout out if you're watching to Firestorm's religion teacher. Just see how that was just a domino that has led us to here.
That's the origin. Mr. Berkey. That's his name. Yeah.
Shout out Mr. Berkey. So you're saying right around Halo Infinite is when you were getting interested into Web3 gaming. Was it Web3 gaming that initially pulled you in, or did you get sucked into like NFT mania or crypto? Were you already involved? What sort of was like the catalyst to bring you into the
Yeah,
space?
I'll step back into like education and professional life as well. That's more so like my gaming hobby side of life. I have way too many interests, so there's a lot of sides to me that would take hours and hours to get into. But on the like education side, I went to college, business school, not really knowing what I wanted to do. My dad has been an accountant slash CFO my whole life. He was like pushing me towards accounting, but I was not about to do something that boring. So I kind of chose a degree, management information systems, which is a combo of like business and IT. So you can kind of go a lot of ways with it, the more technical programming route or the less technical, like project manager route. And that's the route I went. So I did a few internships during college. One was more like actual IT, like server racks and hardware. One was more of like a business intelligence and reporting internship at an oil and gas company. One was IT audit, which is basically making sure a company's server has an updated password, like horrible. So I knew what areas I didn't like. And then my first full-time job right after graduation, 2016, was at a big bank, BOK Financial, and they put me through a program that was like a rotational program for the first 9 months. I got to dabble in like each of the IT groups. So I did a stint in programming. I did a stint in security. I did a stint in the project management office. And that's ultimately what I enjoyed the most. And the team liked me enough to like hire me full time into the project management track. So from there, we moved to Denver. I started working at a late stage startup. It's a luxury travel company called Inspirato. I was a product manager there on their software dev team. So that was more of like an agile, Scrum, traditional software dev team that most devs in like the Web3 space come from. Did that for a few years and then moved on to a marketing software company where I was a product manager there as well. That company, we basically made software for companies to like track their marketing spend, reimburse their like retailers, and do reporting on their marketing campaigns. And during that role is when I had that full-time IRL Web 2 job during the whole Neo Tokyo kickoff, getting the Neo Tokyo job for the first 6 months of me running Neo Tokyo as PM. I still had my Web 2 job. So that is where the crossover happened in my career. So yeah, it was definitely a challenge. I'm not one to like, I'm pretty risk adverse, probably more so than a lot in this space. So like having two full-time jobs sucked at the time, but I just needed to make sure that the Neo Tokyo role is going to be a long-term thing for myself and my family before making the plunge there, because as we all know, the space changes super fast, and it's panned out. 2 years later now, April 27th was the anniversary of Becker hiring Smeagol from the S2 chat known as Angie's.
Oh, I absolutely love it. So take me back there. What was it like? I mean, first, like, I'd be curious, and I think the citizens were, what was that application process like? And then maybe take me into like, what were those first few weeks? What was diving in? I mean, between juggling the Web2 job and, NT and crypto can be a 24/7 sort of thing. So what was that like?
Yeah, my interest in crypto started way back, far enough back that if I would have followed through with it, I'd probably be a rich man right now. But like during college, I remember one of our programming professors brought up Bitcoin, and this was 2013. Yeah. And I remember going to try to buy like $200 of Bitcoin at the time. And then once, I don't know if it was Coinbase or a different platform at that time, but once they asked me to like connect my bank account, I just got too scared because I didn't want to get hacked or, stolen funds from my bank account. So I just stopped there. So unfortunately, I was not brave enough to take that step in 2013. But come 2018, I remember talking to my cousin who's a citizen about Ethereum at like Christmas at grandma's house. And I picked up some Ethereum and Bitcoin in like 2018. That was like the peak of that bull run. I might have the dates slightly wrong, but I mean, I haven't, sold that ETH to this day. But it was at like 2000 or something around there, 1500, 1200, in the thousands. So it's not like a win that the 2013 Bitcoin would have been. But that's when my interest started in like learning what Ethereum was, learning what smart contracts were, and having a general sense of like keeping up with the blockchain space. That started in 2018, but I didn't like dive in financially significantly until post Neo Tokyo in like 2022. So come 2022, that winter was the GameStop craze, if you remember. I'm getting those dates right? GameStop 2022 or 2020. Yeah, it was 2022. I was on Reddit a decent amount. I knew of Wall Street Bets before it blew up into the mainstream, and was up like 4 or 5 grand on GameStop on that, in a few day span as it pumped significantly. Unfortunately, learned my lesson not to hold till it dies after Robinhood shut off the buying of the GameStop share on their app, which crashed the price like 70% overnight. So I remember like following the price, like, and this would be, I hadn't really actively traded stocks. I hadn't actively traded crypto at this point. So this is my first taste of like that degen addictive dopamine rush trading culture. So it instantly hooked me, even though I, lost my 4 grand of profit and only made 1,000 or whatever it was. That basically translated into me starting to like leverage trade crypto on Bybit. So that whole year up until the next fall, I feel like I have the years wrong here, but that year of the GameStop craze, I traded crypto pretty actively on Bybit. I did better than most. Most people lose all their money. I was like positive slightly at the end of the year. So it was definitely overall a waste of time. But the skills I learned, as you're a trader, of analyzing charts, following trends and everything are definitely useful. But monetarily, like it was definitely a waste of time. But that kind of like got me into the active trading world, which I've taken a step back from. I don't leverage trade at all anymore. I feel like, actually, I know in that year I was trading a lot in Bybit. If I would have just held the assets and not tried to, buy and sell every Valley and Peak, I would have made some good money. And I just like, chopped myself to death there. So I don't leverage trade anymore. I'm more of like a swing to long-term trader. And I just don't have time to do that, even if I wanted to right now. So yeah, come the year of GameStop was also the year of NFTs. And the first NFT I had heard of was NBA Top Shot. I remember some of my friends texting about it and being like, hey, what the heck are these NFTs? And I remember my reply was like, it looks like a digital condom wrapper because it did. It was like a foil little square. Um, and yeah, so like I kind of like brushed it off, like, this is kind of lame. And then my cousin, the same cousin that had got me into Ethereum back in 2018, called me and was like, "Hey, I have to tell you about Neo Tokyo." And so this was fall, like October, November, right after the first components starting launching of the S1 collection. And we had like a 3-hour call where he was just going on, down the rabbit hole of explaining like we had to do the Kong climb to get this component and we had to do all these things. And like, it's like Ready Player One in real life. And it was the first time that it like clicked that like the aspects of gaming communities that I was very familiar with in Discord, like being in Halo clans and running groups and Discords myself, combined with like the incentivization and financialization aspect that everyone like bands together and has common ground, for that to grow and to grow together and make money. Along with just like the creativity and like global talent pool that's there. Like all those aspects was just super intriguing to me. And so as the S1 mint happened, my cousin didn't mint the first part. He started buying in like right after that. But I kind of was just like living vicariously through him. I wasn't about to throw 200 grand, at an S1 because the floor was ridiculously high then. But I was just very intrigued with his participation in the community. Damon Needs to Create was who brought my cousin Carol into Neo Tokyo. They had worked together on video shoots because they're both in the production industry. So it was like this interesting trail of like how I even heard about it in the first place because I didn't follow Becker or Elliot or anybody beforehand. So yeah, that Damon to Carol to me is what got me interested. Until the S2s were a thing, I wasn't actually inside the community. I was talking with Carol every day, and he was basically telling me everything that was going on. He sending me screenshots of what Becker was saying. It's against the laws. And I was just following Becker's promo on Twitter. So at that time, the meta tournaments were being promoted starting in that December. I was super intrigued with that. And Carol actually pulled me into some side groups with citizens who were prepping their teams and everything for the meta tournaments, because I was the biggest gamer and talented gamer that Carol knew. And so at that point, I started connecting with, there was a citizen named Bonner and like the whole group around Carol and Damon. I was in and like giving them advisory on like who to hire for their teams and everything. And so once the crab game tournament happened, I played in that myself. I trained for weeks to participate as, you think, using Carol's citizen. We went to a LAN computer set up like 10 minutes away in between our houses and like played one night for like 4 hours just training crab game, which, side note, is one of the worst games ever made. And so yeah, crab game happened. The structure and organization was abysmal. The company running it, I don't know where Becker found them, but they weren't good. I couldn't even get in my lobby. Somebody, shared the code out with their friends, and so the lobby filled up. So I trained for played that horrible game for 3 weeks and then couldn't even get in the crab game lobby. I was furious. It was a horrible, horrible debacle. And so then that happened. Doug won the hand from the crab game tournament, as we all know. Rip, he sold at like the low You're muted, by the way.
Oh, Pico Bottom.
Yeah.
Absolute Pico Bottom. I think Doug Sale literally marked it.
Yeah. Whoever Haji picked that up, right? Haji, man, he got a great price on that hand.
It was such a
Um,
fun time though, but I mean that brings me back just what you're describing. I was running very similar lifetime gamer, had a bunch of buddies, and so I was running off like sort of like table bites tournaments to prepare. So like I was like, okay, all the gamers that I know will just do crab game tournaments for bites because I was yielding them at the time. And so that sort of incentivized people to like play, which, oh, they should have all dumped those immediately. That was back when bites were, super high. And so, yeah, I just remember just the chaos of the crab game, the, PUBG tournament, which we're about to dive into.
yeah.
Yeah, it was poorly organized, but like the chaos and the speculation around it and like running these sort of like off tournaments to like field which of my buddies would be the best at this obscure crab game. Like it was still one of probably my favorite parts of like the Web3 Neo Tokyo journey.
Yeah. Yeah, it has its magical elements and also its Neo Tokyo frustration elements. So yeah, next came the PUBG rounds. PUBG happened to be my game of choice for like that 4 year period. Like all I played was PUBG. That's like my game. I don't play it anymore, but for a couple years. So at that, I was like really plugged into the PUBG streaming community. Like I was on speaking terms with the PUBG head of North America guy and like in his Twitter DMs, and he would like get my feedback on early builds and stuff. And I streamed on the Twitch like PUBG console community category, and so like I knew a bunch of pro players, I knew a bunch of streamers who played thousands of hours, and so the same group of citizens basically hired me to hire pro PUBG players for each of their S1s. um, so yeah, at this point, Becker had gone back and forth on like, is it allowed to hire people? And eventually he just said, yeah, whatever, hire people. So technically it was following the official rules. Um, some of my players did well, some didn't. I played in it myself for a citizen, did fine, but the people who won were like pros, so I didn't. Nobody really stood a chance. Um, so yeah, that happened. The S2 Mint happened around, that was 2022. And then that was like April when the S2 thing wrapped up, or maybe end of March. So at that point, Becker and Elliot had this community. They had their two collections. All the divisions had started organically forming over those 6 months. The news team, the development division, Bad Future started the news team. Danor and Metro were running the dev division. The research lab was going with Mr. Builder and Thayer. The AMA team, Neil was running AMAs like every day, and people were still super interested because of mostly the monetary incentives and the whitelist and everything that were coming out of that as the bull run was kind of tailing off. And so Becker posted, I had my S2 at this point, and he said, hey, I'm looking for a project manager. We need help running the day to day, basically. I replied to him in Angie's, and he accepted my friend request, slid into Becker's DMs on Discord, and yeah, the rest is history. But you asked about the actual process. So like I basically sent him my resume. I wrote him a kind of cover letter, I guess, in recruiting terms, where like I said, these are the issues I see with Neo Tokyo, and these are the things I would do to solve it in like, a few month period. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, my gaming background, along with the like SaaS product and project management background, was a pretty perfect fit, and he agreed. So yeah, he said you should be on like a 2 week trial, and then we can like make it full time after that. And so yeah, that was 2 years ago now.
And with Becker's aversion to ever getting onto a voice call, I got to ask, was this purely text-based or was there any voice part of the interview?
I think you know the answer to that.
I think I do. Now, was Elio much involved in the recruiting process or were you mostly interacting with Becker?
Becker, I mean, Becker and Elliot talk about I'm sure they're communicating on it, but I was messaging Becker about the role. Elliot at the same time was organizing the community leads team. So him and Ronan had chosen the first leads, which included Damon, Felix, Bad Future, Zahai, Thayer, Danor, and a few others that I'm forgetting, most of who are still on the team, which is great. But yeah, he was kind of focusing on building the community leadership structure, and Becker, the day-to-day leadership and management structure. And so right after I got hired, that the leads was kicking off, and I was able to help enable them to, successfully kick off and start the proposal system, incentivized building, and everything there. So yeah, it was a lot. And like, as we know, the sentiment from the S2 mint was not great. As the market tanked, the S2 mint happened, and people weren't sure how the S2 collection was going to fit into the hierarchy. People weren't sure what the utility difference is going to be between S1 and S2. And so there are a lot of unknowns, and I understand a lot of the frustrations, but over time, I think we've dealt with those very well, and the community is in a lot healthier place than it was 2 years ago.
Now a word from our sponsors.
Introducing Honeyland, a fun mobile casual strategy game built on Solana and available in iOS and Android stores across the world. Honeyland has achieved next level convenience by facilitating the purchasing of their NFTs and HXD token within the app, and you can use Google and Apple Pay. They have a massive upcoming airdrop and some partners like MasterCard, NASA, and StepIn. So hop on over to honey.land to learn all about this and more. Introducing Creo Engine, a next-level Web3 gaming ecosystem that connects gamers and developers in a Web3 gaming hub. Hop on their Creo Play platform to check out current and upcoming titles like Evermore Nights, Slime Haven, Creonia Metaverse, and Arcade Fest. The team has earned the endorsement of the chairman of Indonesia's People Consultative Assembly and earned a 10 out of 10 from Hackin on their cross-chain bridge audit. Check all this out and more on creoengine.com. Introducing Gamety, the first gaming platform on Rune's protocol. They are changing the game in the Bitcoin ecosystem by ditching those Ponzi-like, hyperinflated play-to-earn models that we all know and hate. And they are introducing a unique framework for sustainable game economics. This framework already has 30 plus casual games under development and boasts a unique rewarding system and time-based call to action ad system. Check out their website, gamety.io, to learn more. Introducing Ridotto, gambling infrastructure that offers seamless on-chain experiences. Ridotto is built on 3 pillars: play, build, and bankroll. Play your favorite casino games with confidence, knowing that every outcome is fair and transparent. Build on their infrastructure to create your own gaming projects and be the house and earn through bankrolling. Learn all about this and their big upcoming betting on chain launch at ridotto.io.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Firestorm.
Hop in, Ben.
Hey, I'd love to get your take on incentivized building, because there were obviously a string of blog posts, very powerful if you actually go through and read them. How closely were you a part of putting together those blog posts, and what is your perspective on incentivized building? Can you give us the thesis, your thesis, and then like how's it playing out, changes you would see? Like, let's do a deep dive on that, please.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Becker posted a blog post around incentivized building. The general idea is that, Neo Tokyo is a self-sustaining ecosystem of teams and projects and divisions. And at the end of the day, the Neo Tokyo brand can be like a circular system to help lift up and enable all of those things. So that would be through partnership of just, the normal brand co-marketing stuff. That could be through like startup funding, like we did for Citizen Capital, or, a few different other like verticals there. So the original idea is fairly simple. Obviously, it's a long blog post, and Becker explains how it's like a flywheel for the BYTES ecosystem and everything. I don't think it's played out exactly how he wrote it, as far as like it all being based on bytes. Like, as we've seen, BYTES does have a lot more utility, and a lot more projects are starting to integrate it in their partnerships and everything. All the divisions, or a lot of the divisions, use bytes in some way. And we also have, fund some divisions directly from the treasury. Some, like yourselves on the AMA team, you get funding through sponsorships and share some of that with the treasury. So, it hasn't played out exactly how it's written in that blog, but it's stayed along the same vision, and I think it's done pretty well. And there's always room for improvement, and like the revenue share side is something that is important for Neo Tokyo, as royalties have dried up 90% from where it was 2 years ago, to have other revenue streams. And so having like the long-term incentives of growing different teams and services and business lines out of Neo Tokyo with revenue shares is like 100% needed for the health of Neo Tokyo, which, like, I don't think Becker was thinking about that originally, but it's like played out that way, maybe unintentionally.
And to just linger on that for a moment, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the blog post and the incentivized building is to use some sort of carrot to encourage people to begin building value for the community, whether that be using the power of the brand, or perhaps some sort of bytes infusion, or perhaps some other methodology of Neo Tokyo adding a little bit of value and incentivizing building from people within the community. The people who are building are incentivized to then build with the community in mind, and creating value for the community, whether that be that rev share, or building on bytes, or some other way to add value to the community. Once that value has been added, then they get rewarded, and that then creates a flywheel where the builders are then encouraged to continue building by the same incentive system, except just scaling up, and then adding more value to the community, and then again being rewarded once again. So I do think there is that very positive flywheel, and I think there are a lot of really good builders in Neo Tokyo that are contributing to that in a really interesting way. Do you perhaps have a thought as to like what you might hope the community could be doing a little bit differently, or how, if you could wave a magic wand, like, what else could be done there, or how would you kind of like wave a magic wand to kind of shuffle things around? Hopefully you understand what I'm asking.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I don't think people realize how accessible it is to build something with Neo Tokyo. Like, you guys are a great example of, you saw an area, which was this podcast and the AMA team, where you're like, all right, there's big room for growth here, and we can provide a lot of value, and we can receive a lot of value from Neo Tokyo helping boost us, reach, promo, everything. So you saw that, and you've, executed very well on that. Like, not everyone can execute. Not everyone has that talent to do that, but the people that can, and there's a lot of those in the Neo Tokyo community, I feel like they have like this feeling of like, I need approval. Neo Tokyo has to approve what I'm going to do. Not really sure what the proposal system is. And I feel like they have like this imaginary blocker where people, no matter what idea they have, can integrate that with Neo Tokyo if it's a good idea. And they can get the support there. So like, the teams that are still around today have done that. The teams that, Ben, you're working on, and our newer partnerships are doing that. So yeah, I feel like you see that, Ben, like it's accessible. Like, if you can talk to me for 30 minutes about it, and talk to the leads and council, and have a well thought out proposal, like, we'll make it happen, and Neo Tokyo will help you. So like, that's kind of the message I want to get out there. And we try to reiterate that on town halls and like a reminder of what the proposal system, how it works and what it's for. Maybe we could do a better job of explaining, but that's just generally how I'm feeling about it.
Would love for you to perhaps dive into bytes and how you see the future of bytes playing out. What do you think are the most important things that we should be paying attention to, or how we could be adding value, and just kind of your longer term thesis on that?
Yeah. Bytes are interesting. Every token is pretty interesting, as we've learned, as we're now veterans in this space, us three. Like, narrative is what matters with the token. It's like the utility has such a small impact on price. So it's hard as a builder to like focus on actual value and utility when, a tweet from Becker will have 20 times more impact. So it's definitely a challenge and something that, I don't have the answer for, but I can tell you what we are doing for Bytes, which is, proposing it to be integrated in basically every partnership that we have. It's an option. It's not something that we require for every partnership, but like, buying loot boxes in your game, giving certain perks to Bytes holders, things like that are like easy wins to cross pollinate through communities. That's one approach we're currently taking. The other approach is like the main utility, which is for citizen capital allocation. And we lost Ben. And, there are other plans that we've discussed as well to like, increase that even more as far as like what a byte holder would get for investment outside of holding a citizen. So like those like clear value and utility adds for bytes are what we can impact. It's just like the narrative hype stuff that I feel like Neo Tokyo is more dependent on Becker and Elliott to do, which that's pretty clear. So yeah, that's kind of where bytes are at right now. So Nick, I'll throw it to you. Like, how do you feel about utility versus narrative? Like, do you agree with me in general?
Oh, I definitely do. I started when I first joined Neo Tokyo, just like really trying to stay focused on all of like the chats where people are discussing. So though I participate very little in Bytes Price Talk, I read almost every message that goes in there. And it's a reoccurring, we need utility, we need utility, we need utility. And really, as you pointed out, when you've been around the, circuit a couple times through these cycles, this is only my second, you do really come to see that utility does not drive price.
And Bytes has more utility than 90% of tokens.
Absolutely.
Already. Yeah.
And really just focusing on the gaming space particular, which, the audience should be well familiar with. It's not the games that are the most ready that pump the hardest. In some ways, once your game is playable, it's a hurdle, because what essentially trading crypto is trading stories. It's narratives. And so it really is the narrative that ends up driving. That being said, when you've got like sort of, it's deflationary over time, but inflationary in the short term as they yield, the more use cases that keep people actually churning bytes, whether those go to the treasury or they go to these different projects, that certainly has a role, but totally agree that, what's going to move the needle is, people follow Becker and Elliott. That's what moves the needle. One thing that I'd love to get your opinion on, because it's something that me and Ben talk about a lot and think of trying ways that it could be incorporated either through the AMA team or through other divisions that are working with bytes. Is buy and burn, is there a place for that? Is there a shortcoming to that? It's sort of an oldie but a goodie. So I'd be curious on what your opinion is there. Maybe as an example, if we took a percent of sponsorship revenue and bought and burned bytes. You don't have to weigh too much in on that hypothetical, but just as a vehicle for the concept.
Yeah, the burn mechanic is something that Neo Tokyo has used before. Bytes were taken to level up your S2, right? and burned. A Crasher with the merch store burns bytes for, I can't remember the percentage for, people that purchase through the merch store, Shibuya Mall. Like you said, right now with the tokenomics from bytes, it's the yield, which started for bytes 2.0 a year ago, was pretty high. But even a month later, I think in June, which will be 1 year from that launch, it's at like 50%. So in 2 years, it's at 75% down from what it was at launch. It's a pretty drastic curve down. So right now, yield is, kind of high daily. And so will the bytes burn mechanics have that much of an impact right now? Not as much, but long term, I think they will. So the more we can get in place now, then in a year and a half from now, when yield is pretty abysmal, it will have a bigger impact on price and supply. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So we don't need to wait till then, but we can ramp those up over time.
Yeah, and I think that's the big differentiator for people who might be joining in on the podcast and not familiar with the ecosystem as much is Bytes is a token that's been around for a long time. It's a veteran sort of token in the gaming space or short-lived space, but it's also a token that's focusing on the future. So when you live in the era of meme coins where everyone's sort of in agreement that like this isn't going to survive long term, obviously Doge is the exception to that, with a few others. Bytes has like a long runway. And so, there's always these temptations to do these sort of like short, pumpy sort of things. But I think, learned through experience in Neo Tokyo that that's not a way to build a sustainable community. And, there is a merit to the long game as I'm not going to say we're Bitcoin, but it's clearly worked out for Bitcoin playing the long game instead of, Satoshi coming out of the ether and being like, oh, actually we're going to make, the Bitcoin logo, llama, and, we're going to maybe build some DeFi on top of that. We're seeing a little bit of that now. So yeah, that's kind of sort of my overall sort of like thoughts around Bytes. As we're getting close to the top of the hour, I'd be remiss if we didn't get a chance to, mine your opinion on just sort of the crypto gaming space. Would love to get sort of your feel for some of the big differentiators between, the original crypto gaming cycle that we all sort of got into Neo Tokyo around, and now like this new, more mature cycle. What are some of the differences that you're seeing? How's like crypto gaming grown over that time period?
Yeah. Let me put on my jacket so we can match. I wanted
Hell
to put it on
yeah.
halfway through and I forgot.
Shout out Crasher for, that's the other thing about Neo Tokyo. I do not know if there's fresher merch in the entire game. Shout out Kaiju Kings. They've got pretty fresh merch, but Crasher is constantly delivering new hot fire along with the rest of the merch team.
Yeah, we're working on some secret another merch collection for this summer. So I'm excited for that one to be revealed here soon.
I hope it's heat appropriate because I am sweating perpetually at any sort
it
of.
is. It's like shirts and shorts. So yeah,
Let's
should be
go.
good. So general thoughts on like the gaming market. Yeah, it's pretty clear that the metaverse pump and dump as it was when Neo Tokyo kicked off, like none of those games got users. Even non-Web3, like Facebook's metaverse didn't gain any traction. So like the metaverse trend was interesting to see and have people like imagine what that future could be like. But in reality, the world just isn't quite ready for it yet. We've also seen that with the Apple Vision Pro just a couple months ago. Like the sales haven't done very well from Apple. And so like on the VR AR side, it seems like it's trying to find its footing. So that's not even thinking about blockchain, which we have other hurdles and a bigger uphill battle. So like now it's different because there are so many games with more legit teams being made, but it's also like a similar market where most people just don't really understand gaming. And so a lot of the games that are, within the right narrative of AI plus gaming or AI plus this. That's like the trend lately. Or play to airdrop this. It's still like focused on the financialization aspects of the crypto hype cycles that isn't going to be sustainable long term. And I don't necessarily think that a lot of the benefits of blockchain that people like harp on for gaming are true. Like even I mean, you guys, I've listened to plenty of episodes you guys have talked about. Ben has a pretty bullish perspective on like digital assets and how people like are going to 100% want their in-game item on chain. And right now, like I wish he was here to defend himself, but I don't necessarily think that's like the killer use case for blockchain and gaming. Like people care about their CS:GO skins and buy and sell them, and it's a decent user experience, and they're very valuable. Like from the user perspective, what is blockchain going to add to make that so much better for them? And so I think there are other use cases that could be like actually solving issues for users. One is like gaming has transitioned to like a games as a service model where games live on servers. Basically, they're constantly updated. And over time, like your favorite game you played 10 years ago, you maybe can't play it anymore because that game studio isn't paying for server space at AWS anymore. And like 90% of those games that have online matchmaking and online service models like die off and you can't play them anymore. They're like niche communities that host like your own servers, and you have to like go through this whole installation process to like play with a group of 20 people that still care about the game. And it's a very convoluted process, but over time, this is going to become an even bigger issue where like all of these online games, because everything's online now, like once the game studio doesn't want to pay for that server space anymore, it's going to die. And it's not like a one-to-one solution, but like if a game is built on chain and more publicly visible and more portions of the code are on chain, I feel like it'll make it easier for the communities of those games to like help them live in perpetuity. So the server space and issue isn't necessarily solved there, but obviously we have like some processing power blockchain projects coming up that could interplay with the games themselves being hosted on the blockchain. So like the whole open source model that's needed to keep these games alive, I feel like there's something that could play together there to like solve a real problem for gamers and like be a big win for the gaming community that, you know, couldn't be solved with centralized servers, closed off code, and everything on that side. So like that's one example of like real problem solution that blockchain maybe could help with if somebody smarter than me can think of how that would work together. But like ownership of digital assets themselves, I don't really feel like is like the killer use case that are really going to get gamers to like overcome the stigma of crypto, NFTs, blockchain, which is like very real right now. So
Yeah, I tend to agree just because the trend seems to be users are just becoming like not like general sort of like people are becoming like more and more reliant on that centralized sort of like entity, like especially in a scam ridden environment where, oh, fraudulent charge on your credit card. I'll just change that in my system. JP Morgan can make that go away. Chase can make that go away. Like we're becoming more and more dependent on those guardrails where it does feel like people who self custody are going to be relatively niche. So I agree with the sentiment that that doesn't seem to me either to be the killer use case. One of the interesting things that I think happened by accident that right now, as things stand today, is crypto's biggest advantage or crypto gaming is that the community around these video games have been let down so many times by, you know, the makers of Halo, the maker of Call of Duty. My brother's a big COD maxi, and so he's constantly complaining about how Activision is screwing them over one way or another.
I feel like everyone who plays Warzone hates Warzone.
Yeah, I literally heard that they make the file so big so that no one has any choice but to just play Warzone because they can't fit any other games on their console. And
Oh
it's so
man.
hard to download, which I love that little conspiracy theory. But I think it's just the fact that we're able to build the Discord system and the NFT sort of like community building allows this sort of like A/B testing with the community, which I think has yielded, some interesting results in like games like Pixels, Shrapnel, Dead Drop, which I think is going to be coming back sometime soon, but certainly there is some give and take there. But again, I want to be respectful of your time as we're coming up on the top of the hour. So is there anything we didn't get a chance to dive into? I know there's quite a few things, but anything you want to leave the audience with, please take the opportunity now to do so.
I've got a few minutes. But yeah, I mean, I I feel like most people are focusing on the wrong use cases for blockchain for gaming, and they're the narratives that are sexy and easy to understand. But if you talk to actual gamers and like do some user research, and as like a product manager, I'm always thinking of like the actual end user because the teams building them, the fanatics that are just a fan of the tech and everything, like we think very differently from the people that have 45 minutes to play their favorite game a few nights a week. There needs to be seamless user experience and also a reason to or like features that are going to be drawing in attention, drawing in more money from like the game studio's perspective. Because what the changes that happen in gaming always like have to benefit the user and the game studio, and sometimes just the game studio because they're the ones that ultimately make the decisions. So like have microtransactions and DLC enhance our gaming experience. I don't know. You could argue either way because gaming 15 years ago was simple and pretty nice to install a game and not have to worry about a 10 gig update every time you turn on your Xbox. So, yeah, those are just some like high level thoughts on the industry that non gamers have no idea. And there's plenty of non gamers in Web3 gaming that are speculating on narratives and everything that don't really understand what's going on behind the scenes. But hopefully the actual game studios do, and most of them do. They're building games, which I don't necessarily know how to do. So who am I to judge?
Well, I
Hey,
certainly.
Firestorm,
Yep.
one one last question. I know you are short on time here, but just to kind of bring it back to NT for 1 second, um, what does it mean to you for us to be the crypto gaming Illuminati?
Man, what a deep question. um, I mean, the mission has stayed the same to build the most valuable network for builders and investors in crypto gaming. Like the if we can be the go-to place for those two target audiences to get the most value out of compared to any other community or network in the world, like that's what we're trying to build. And I feel like we have been successful at that so far, but there's plenty of room to grow. Um, Plenty of value to add. And yeah, I'm excited about a lot of things we're doing this year, just in the short term of like the next 6 months. So who knows what it'll be like in the 10-year vision that Becker, he said this is like my 10-year project. So I feel like we're gonna be talking in like 5 years from now, and we're gonna be like, uh-oh, there's only 7 years or there's only 3 years left, guys. Is Neo Tokyo going away after 10 years? But no, it's never going away.
We're here
Uh,
forever.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. Well, Firestorm, really appreciate you coming on and joining Ben and I today. And a huge, huge thank you for all that you do for NT. I mean, when you joined was certainly an inflection point when, as you mentioned, sentiment was low. We were trying to find like sort of the next step forward. And just to see how much Neo Tokyo has grown over the last year. And I personally can attest to the amount of people that I've met inside of Neo Tokyo, the amount of opportunities, this podcast being one of them, all of the things going on with the AMA team, all the people that I've met, all the investment opportunities that have come from it. I mean, Neo Tokyo really is something special, and haven't been able to find that in any other sort of group inside of Web3 or really outside of it. So definitely big thank you. And we'll certainly have to have you on again to dive into all the topics that we're leaving on the table.
I know there's a lot to talk about, so let's do it again.
I'll be pinging you anytime we got a guest who bails. Tap
Yeah,
Firestorm.
I'm
And
the second option every time.
oh, and we'll throw you on the calendar as well. How's your August looking?
We'll be in Vegas. We could do it in person.
Yes, we are overdue for an IRL podcast, so we'll keep that little seed and water it and figure out if we can figure out a way to do a big IRL podcast event. Ben, thank you as always, and safe travels on your journey. And we will be back next week with another episode of Interlinked. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Tokyo.